this is Lips of Steel podcast, unscripted, unfiltered, and unstoppable. And today we're going to have a little bit of a different tone, a little bit of a tougher subject to talk about, and it's about suicide awareness and prevention. And it's, even though it's tough stuff, that's what Lips of Steel is about. It's about talking about the tough topics and just kind of digging into it. So my name is Nicole, and I'm going to be your host today, and my guest is Leslie, and I'm going to say this wrong again.
Preuss.
Preuss, see? Leslie Preuss. And she is a licensed clinical social worker. Psychologist. See, I'm going to get it all messed up. Unscripted, unfiltered. That's what it's all about. It's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. So, Leslie, thank you for being here today. And just give me a little bit of your background and what it is that you do in your day-to-day life.
My day-to-day is never dull and never the same, but I am a licensed clinical psychologist for the past 28 years. Hard to say that, but yes, wow. 28 years. And I work predominantly with children, adolescents, and families who are twice exceptional, but the other part of my work has always been with suicide prevention and education. So I was at the University of Michigan Medical Center doing suicide intervention in their suicide clinic. And then I was in the intensive day unit at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center and have now been in private practice for years working with families, and most recently in the last 3 years got onto the board of SAVE, which is Suicide Awareness Voices of Education. Okay. And they work on suicide prevention, education, awareness, and they do the prevention, intervention, and postvention. So that's what
sounds like a
is.
Great organization and very, very needed. What prompted me to want to do this episode, a couple things. First of all, I have two sons that are former Marines. And, I've got some statistics here. Some say statistics are boring, but I think they're important because they really highlight why it is that we need to talk about this. So in veterans, and this is from the VA's website, it's estimated that 22 veterans commit suicide every day. And that just absolutely blows my mind. 22 a day. Yeah. That is unbelievable. Approximately 8,030 commit suicide every year, and 5,540 are 50 and older.
Our largest growing population of suicide victims has been in the 50-plus age group. And so more and more we're seeing older families. It used to be more in teens.
Right.
We certainly see it more in males than in females in terms of committed suicides. Attempts are higher in females than males. That has historically been the case and continues to be that way.
Okay.
But those are all the groups we're targeting. There's even certain occupations, whether that's construction workers, air traffic control, first responders for sure.
Yep.
And
we saw a huge rise in suicides and suicide attempts after COVID and during COVID.
Because rates of anxiety, depression, all increased tremendously with the isolation and people being out of work, certain jobs closing, businesses going out of business.
Right.
Those are huge risk factors for people.
And the lack of resources and the lack of ability to access the resources, I think, at that time.
Right, and lack of connection. Just that lack of connection. People don't realize how much these micro contacts matter.
Right.
So somebody who's feeling down, feeling upset, feeling like, it's over, I'm hopeless, there's nothing to live for. They go out to the grocery store and somebody goes, oh my God, hey Seth, what's going on? It's great to see you. That can be a turning point for somebody.
Right.
And they were missing all of that because people weren't leaving their homes.
Right.
And substance use went way up.
Right, of course. But for the veterans, so again, I have two sons that are veterans, and one of my sons was in a unit that they had a really rough time in Iraq. And in that unit, they have had, just from the people that he knew, they probably had 15 suicides. And that's been in the last 13 years. And then there were not just suicides, but there were the accidents that probably were preventable. The guys that were going 120 miles an hour down the road. I mean, technically, that's a suicide. Really, they don't list it as a suicide. So our numbers that we have here
maybe
are shocking, but they're probably a lot higher based upon just the behaviors of the veterans that are not coping well when they come back from.
And not thinking straight and not reintegrating well. And
Right.
I know the military tries to have programs for reintegration, but
Yeah.
I think the follow-up could be improved. And I know
for
that
sure.
all the suicide prevention organizations, and obviously near and dear to my heart is SAVE, but
Right.
there's plenty out there. They're trying to get to these people before they get to that hopeless place. But I agree with you. I think that our rates are probably underestimates because overdoses are not always counted
Correct.
as suicide, but some of them are. Driving recklessly, driving under the influence. These are
Risky behaviors.
risky behaviors
And-
where they just don't care anymore.
Right.
They don't care what happens. And I think that is, part of the work that we're trying to do is catching these people earlier and giving them resources so that we can prevent that suicide from happening or the death from happening.
So in the general population, veterans have, a 40% higher rate in their population versus general population from the statistics that I saw.
Right.
The CDC talks about, and I think people don't realize that there's, yes, we have 49,000 people that died by suicide in 2023. Okay, that's their numbers. But 12.8 million people seriously thought about suicide. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is what a lonely feeling that is, to think that you're the only one out there that's thinking about that.
Well, and not only that, it goes against every grain of our being. We have a survival instinct as humans,
Absolutely.
much like any other animal. In fact,
Yeah.
we're the only animal who commits suicide. But it's fascinating to go against that, the hopelessness that you have to be experiencing, the sense of loss, loneliness,
Grief.
true grief,
Right.
and really it boils helplessness and hopelessness has to be astronomical to override all of those systems in our brains that say stay alive, stay alive, stay
Right.
alive, do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking to think about.
So it goes down from there. So 3.7 million made a plan, 1.5 million attempted. So we don't realize that, we put the care out for the people, and we talk about suicide rates. And, obviously the numbers are a big number between the 1.5 million and the 49,000.
Right.
But the 1.5 million, the 12 million, those are the ones that we really need to be talking to and talking about. The ones that have already, finalized their decision, there's nothing we can do at that point, obviously. We want to get to the ones that are talking
Contemplating.
about it, that are thinking about it, that are, in a dark place, that,
And that's why I wish people would just talk about it. People are so afraid
yeah.
to say, are you thinking about committing suicide? They
Yes.
won't ask because they think that by saying it, they're going to push somebody over the edge or they're going to give them the idea. By that point, people already have the idea. That you're not bringing up something that they haven't thought about. And in fact, just asking may be enough for them to say, wow, there's somebody out there who cares enough to
Right.
check in. And that caring goes a long way. And they may say yes. And then I think people also panic. What do I do if they say yes? I'm not a psychologist.
Right.
I'm not a social worker. I don't know what I'm doing. You don't have to. You just have to care.
That's
And
it.
you sit with them and you help them call resources, whether that is 988, which is a great hotline that was
Okay.
finally created with a ton of support out in the community.
Right,
That
I'd
is
say that, make sure we
specific to
say that
suicide.
clearly,
988.
You just dial 988 on a
And
cell
it
phone,
is specifically for suicide prevention.
but you can dial it on a cell phone or a landline.
Anything, just like
Perfect.
911, but this is very specific to suicide.
Okay,
And
that's a great
that hotline
resource.
was created because we knew that this was a separate issue from 911. 911,
Yes.
they're dealing with a car accident, or
Yes.
there's somebody speeding on the highway, or they have everything going on.
Sure.
And so 988 was created so that people had a very specific place to go with resources and people trained on the other side, specifically in suicide prevention and intervention.
Which is great because they've had the 1-800 number for a long time, but who's going
But
to
who
remember
remembers
that?
that? Right.
It's like, I need a number now. You're saying having the conversation and asking the question. I will tell you that recently, my background, I'm a nurse. So I already have all of, I've got that background. I have that nurturing character, all of that. And I also have the skill set and education to back me up to probably see things that maybe other people don't. But I did have someone that was very close to me who has had issues with depression off and on for a while and is, expressed some of the darker feelings. And when just recently there was a suicide, and it was actually, it's in our community, and it was a public person. And they actually said, you know, and I'm seeing this more and more, is they suffered for a long time with depression. Just like you say, they suffered through cancer for 5 years and finally succumbed to the disease, to the illness.
Right.
And I thought, it just kind of struck me the way I'm noticing that they're putting these death notices out, these obituaries out. And so I contacted this person who I knew had been struggling off and on, and I said, and this to me, I think, is something that will help people that want to have this conversation, is I'd like to have a difficult conversation with you.
And that's a great way to start.
And
or I've been noticing something and I really need to talk to you about it because I'm scared for you.
But
Or,
see, I
and that's
haven't
okay.
noticed anything, but for me is I knew the history. And I
And that's
didn't
enough.
know if I'd missed something. So it's like, I need to have a difficult conversation with you, and here's why. Because this has happened in the community, because I've seen this and I know you've struggled, how are you doing? What's going on? Just let's, what's going on with your depression? Specifically, being to the point and not mincing words. Like,
Right,
well,
and
how are
not
you feeling
avoiding it.
today? Or, and trying to, skate around it or tap dance around it. How is your depression? How are you managing it? How is it showing up for you right now? It was such a great conversation, and it gave me so much relief because we did talk about the tough stuff.
And you're comfortable doing that.
Yes.
You have a background in it. I have a background in it. Other people are not as comfortable.
Right.
And if you don't feel like you want to get into the toughest part because that's really hard for you or you don't feel trained,
Right.
you can just say to somebody, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I know you've had this history. I know you struggle or have struggled in the past with depression or anxiety, or I know that you just lost a loved one and I'm concerned. I'm here for you. You can reach out any time of day, any day of the week. That sometimes is just enough to give them, hope, or give them
Absolutely.
a connection, a point of connection, and say, you know what, I may not be able to answer all the questions, but I sure will sit with you and help you find the resources.
Right.
That's enough. You don't have to have all the answers. None of us have all the answers.
No, and I think, sometimes saying, like you said, I'll sit with you and we'll find them together. That's
Is
connection.
enough. That's a connection, and that's support.
And yes,
And that's what
100%.
people are looking for when they hit that dire place, when they're thinking, I have no one. Now they know they have someone.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes.
And I think one of the things that are most difficult is that people forget because they're sitting on their phones and they do the text message thing, which text is good too. Text is a connection, but it's okay to pick up the phone and make a phone call. People think all the time, oh, well, they're busy and I don't know if I really want to bother them. Pick up the phone and just say, you know what? Just wanted to say hi. Wanted
Stop
to
by
hear
the
your voice.
house. Grab a coffee together.
Yes.
Any of those things matter. And I think, I want to make sure to say this because I think it gets very difficult. People may hear us talking and think, oh my gosh, I could have prevented so-and-so from
Right.
committing suicide. Not every suicide is preventable. You may have been there for that person and for whatever reason they couldn't get over it. I mean, I'll tell you, it's not a secret. My brother committed suicide after 40 years of struggling with schizoaffective disorder.
Okay.
You do everything you can. You get them to the best doctors. You get them all the medications. You have them in and out of hospitals, in treatments. You can't always prevent it.
Right.
But we do our best to prevent as many as we can.
Yes.
And you keep going. And you keep pressing on and trying to help people who are able to hear that in that moment. But it may not be everybody.
Right. And that,
And
and
that's
I
not
know
your
that
fault.
that's hard. That is, I know that for families that have lost a loved one to suicide, I have a cousin, a young girl, committed suicide, and I know her mom did everything. Her mom did there's, we talked, off and on, and she's like, could I have done more?
Right.
And I'm like, maybe, but all
But
you
you
would have
don't know
done
that
is
that
maybe,
would've worked either.
right, you may have been able to do more, but it may have just pushed it out a little further.
Maybe, or it may have not changed a thing, and you never know that. We can't,
Yeah, we
hindsight
can't-
is 20/20, and
Absolutely.
people get stuck in that loop, which is why I think the postvention piece is so important.
Yes.
To get in there with families, loved ones, parents in particular, when they lose a child, it's one of the hardest things I think
Yes.
that I deal with day to day. But certainly siblings, loved ones, girlfriends, best friends.
Yeah.
Who think, oh my gosh, I said no to going out that night. Would that have stopped this?
Yeah.
You never know.
They tried to call, or I've heard they tried to call me. I didn't pick up the call. And
If I
but
just had
what,
picked
if
up
I
the
just
phone.
picked up that call, they may be alive today. And that's a little bit of
It's a lot to carry around.
It is.
And so being there to support that person and say, look, you've done everything. You've been there every step of the way. You had no way of knowing that night was any different than any other night.
Right.
Um,
Especially if they've talked about it for a period of time.
And this may have gone on for decades or years, or they may have never mentioned it at all. You don't know, and there's no perfect response to anything. But there are resources when people are starting to feel that way, and I think you can pay attention. But I hate for people to walk away thinking, oh my gosh, this is my fault, or
Right.
I could have stopped this. Ultimately, is that person's decision,
Yes.
and you do the best you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's all you can do. So a couple of things, I guess, how can we identify the difference between sad and true clinical depression that potentially is leading to these suicidal ideations or thoughts or whatever?
And Nicole, that's a great question. I mean, we all feel sad.
Yeah.
Right? And
we
that
should
could
all
happen.
have sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
There's
there's
no way to
sad,
get
there's
around
happy.
this.
We should have both of those, right?
And most people have that imbalance. And you look at impact on world and what it's doing to their day-to-day. People feel sad. They may stay home for the afternoon or say, you know, I just don't feel like going out tonight. And then they're kind of back to normal, going to work. They're still taking care of their kids and going out and getting food and taking care of their bodies and doing what they need to do. That's a pretty typical sadness. And it comes and
Right.
goes. It passes relatively quickly. When
I mean,
people
and they can spend a day or two in bed.
Yeah, of course. Or
Right.
eat ice cream. They have a pint of ice cream that night and they
Yeah.
don't want to leave and they're curled up in a blanket and they're watching sad movies and they're crying. That's a really typical sadness.
Okay.
When that period starts to extend or you start to see that it really truly is interfering with their lives, they can't get to work for a more extended period of time. Or when they're at work, they're not functioning. They can't concentrate.
Okay.
They keep saying no. They don't want to leave the house. When you do see them, they start looking disheveled or they're not taking care of themselves hygiene-wise. You see that they're not eating or they're overeating too, where it's really having an impact longer term.
And potentially substance abuse.
Substance use can play into that. Substance abuse can certainly play into that, and those are different. Withdrawing. They won't take your calls anymore. They're not answering texts. They're not responding to anyone in the family. So it's not just you. All of a sudden you realize they're not connecting with any friends or loved ones. You really want to start getting in there and seeing what's going on. That's much more of a clinical depression.
So personal experience here. I had a friend who struggled with depression, still does, and it gets very bad. We had a conversation, and she says, if you ever see me withdrawing, if you ever see me like where I suddenly am not interacting as much or whatever, she says, that's when you need to come in and say, hey, what's going on?
And kudos to her for saying that, by the way.
It was great.
And asking for that.
And, it's like, come in, and you need to find out what's going on, get me out of my dark place, because I tend to be a hermit. I tend to, completely withdraw from everybody. So she gave me that information. Great information. And all of a sudden, at one point, I'm like, I haven't heard from her in a while. What's going on here? Checking a little bit on social media. She hasn't been on social media. Hey, what's going on? Checked in. I'm fine. Inquired further. Let's go meet for coffee. Did all the things that she asked me to do. And, push it even further. Finally, it's like, hey, I know something's going on. And let's go out. Let's go do something. Let's go to dinner. Let's go meet and do something. And I said, I will come over there right now. Whatever you need from me, I will be there. And she pushed back so hard that it was like, whoa. And there was a period of time where there was no contact. Well, I happened to run into her. And I'm like, of course, how are you? What's going on? I said, what happened? Like, we went from being friends, all this stuff, what happened? And she flipped the script on me. And she said, you pushed me too hard. So
And here's the thing.
That
Again,
is-
there's no perfect answer, right?
Yeah.
There's no perfect response or intervention to any of this. But you did what you could, and through that period, whether it made her angry or not, and we have to remember, clinical depression, clinical level anxiety is a mental illness.
Yeah.
People, when they are in these states and people struggling with these illnesses, they're illnesses, and they make their brains make decisions for them that are not healthy, that may not be rational.
Right.
So in her rational state, she asked for help and she reached out.
Right.
When the depression took over her brain, she was saying, get out, get out, get out. I don't want you. You're too much.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. It means that she now knows you're there, and she's annoyed and irritated, but she knows you're there. And that's really important. And as her brain gets healthier and as the depression starts to subside and the chemicals even out, she'll say, you know what, I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
But you gotta
We didn't get there, but
not
you
yet.
know, but
not
you know,
yet. And maybe not ever, because you don't know what the I don't know what the
whatever
whole
else
story
is
is,
going on,
but
right. I mean, we still communicate occasionally, and she seems to be doing very well, and I'm super happy about that. But it's, you know, sometimes we try, and I think that's what I want to say is like,
you just keep trying.
we just keep trying. And
can
sometimes
be
you're going to
very
get
frustrating.
pushback, and sometimes you're going to get that person that goes bam and says absolutely not.
100%. And you breathe and you say, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah,
I've done what
and
I
maybe
can.
I'm not the right person for her at this time.
And maybe not.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a different intervention that she's looking for in that moment. Again, you don't know, but
Right.
you've done what you can. And as people on the outside, that's all you can do. We were not mind readers. There's no
Yes.
such thing.
No
And
crystal balls.
No crystal balls in this world. Took the words right out of my mouth.
Yes.
There are no crystal balls. And we truly do the best you can. And you just say, you know what? I'm here for you. Again, it gets back to I'm here for you.
Right.
When you're ready, I'm here.
Yeah.
But that is tough.
So we talk about sadness to depression, and then when depression moves to danger zone. And what are the things that we're looking for? What are the signs that we're looking for that are the big red flags that this person is now part of the 12.8 million seriously thinking about suicide?
I think that's when you start getting into that severe withdrawal, not really wanting to communicate, maybe hinting at things like, I don't know why life is worth living. I don't know why I'm here. I have no purpose. These are big red flags, huge red flags in my world. They may say, you know what? Who would care if I died? Things like that start coming out more and more. That's when you also want to start thinking about, and we haven't talked about this yet, but lethal means. Do they have access to a gun? How well do you know this person? Because I'll tell you, part of the reason veterans, first responders, military, they all have guns in their houses.
Right. And the statistics say 50% or more are by firearms.
Yeah. And that is part of why gun locks. You know, one of the things SAVE does, they give them away in high-risk communities, hunting communities.
Yeah.
People, you know, there are different areas of the country, different areas of the world where guns are more prone to be in homes.
Right.
You want them locked, gun lock on the gun in a gun safe,
Right.
because that adds layers of access. You're trying to get them to think. You want points where they say it's a decision point, right?
Right.
And the more of those that happen, the less likely it is to actually complete the suicide.
Okay.
Because they've had to think it multiple times, right?
Right.
I have to go to the house. I have to be alone. Now I have to get into the gun safe or into the room where the safe is. Now when I get the gun, I've got to undo the gun lock or put in a code. These are all places where they may say, you know what, I need to call someone.
Right.
I need to go get help.
Take a
This
pause.
isn't right. Take a pause.
Right.
Access to medications that are highly lethal, things like that. You want to start thinking about, would that be the case? And maybe you call in professionals, right? Los Angeles has the psychiatric mobile crisis units,
Right.
And teams.
Yep.
Pretty much every city now, I think. More and more, they're adding social workers, psychologists, mental health first responders with police, with fire, because they want them going out and doing these assessments. So you call them and say, I'm really worried about my friend. I'm really worried about my cousin. I'm really worried about my brother. Can you please go check on them? And they will do welfare checks and go
Yeah.
make sure. And they have the training and the ability to put them on a 5150 if they need to, which is a hold. They'll put them on a
Right.
3-day hold in a facility where they can be evaluated, assess the risk, and see what else they might need.
Right. And potentially look at other elements such as medications and stuff that might help
Absolutely,
to
because maybe they
stabilize.
stop taking them.
Right.
That is not atypical, whether it's my population or anybody else. It's not atypical for somebody to get into one of these modes and just stop taking their medication, stop doing the things that are there to help them and help to create these pauses.
Yeah. Because the medications are not going to be, because of how the medications all act, they don't always have that efficacy that is flat. They're going to have times where maybe there's other things that
course.
they've done and the medicine may not work as well or may
And
not
that
be
can be
supporting
hormones.
them.
That can be seasons.
100%.
That can be daylight time. All of that impacts how well they work. It's not these are not perfect sciences. I wish it was, but it's
Yeah.
not. And
You just said something though that, and I really wanted to bring this up because you said seasons.
yes,
And, is there a season for suicide? And one of the things that I've noticed, and this is as a healthcare provider and probably someone that's just been more acutely aware of suicide in the community, suicides seem to happen more prevalently during transition times. So end of school years, changes of seasons, when the weather changes and becomes, more cold and cloudy and stuff like that. It seems like there are surges during those times.
and I think there is some seasonality to it. I also think transitions cause stress. When you
Right.
think about when are suicides most likely to happen, people say, "Oh, why is it always around the holidays?" I hate to
Right.
say it, as positive as they are,
Right,
you and I both know,
exactly.
and we talk about this often, as
Yes.
positive as they are and you're getting together, it is a ton of stress, and families can be very stressful to get together with as much
Right.
as we love them. It's a lot of personalities getting together once or twice a year, and we're trying to get both sides of the family together or whatever.
Yes.
It is a giant stressor, just like
Yes.
moving. Weddings, super positive, but it's really stressful. All of these things. So I think that all contributes. So if you look at the seasonality and transition, I think the transitions correlate with the stress.
Right.
It also
Absolutely.
correlates
And I don't
with-
think people realize that it is, even if it's something that seems positive, like you said, like the holidays or starting a
Yep.
new school, going off to college,
Absolutely.
finishing a year of college. It's like, yay.
Graduating from college.
Graduating, right.
It's a huge
There's
stress for
so
these
many
kids.
things. But what it brings up then is when you finish one chapter, another chapter begins. And that chapter that begins might look like a great big scary blank page.
It could be that, or it could just be scary because you know what's coming, but you've never been there before.
Right.
Right? And
Lots
that
of
takes-
things to make up about
And independence, each stage, each chapter typically require, and this is where my specialties are, but each chapter in a kid's development, as exciting as it feels to us, and we watch it, they're terrified. They've never been there before.
Right.
We've been there. We've been there, done that, and we know you survive it. But when they are going through it, it feels huge. It
Yes.
feels insurmountable. It feels like, well, everyone else can do it, but what if I can't?
right.
And the people at risk for this are people who have depression, anxiety, things of that nature that make them believe they may be the one and only that can't do it.
Right.
They may not be successful. And that's scary.
And
It's
not
terrifying.
ignoring, there's a lot of people that, try to like brush aside, oh, they're just moody. Oh, they're just, they're always
They're an
pouty.
angsty teenager. They're,
They got teenage angst. But there's so many other things that, we see the eating disorders, which, especially with girls.
more and more with boys, sadly.
Yeah. Well,
But-
the bodybuilding, the eating disorders can go both ways. We cannot ignore the fact that the LGBTQ youth,
It's huge.
it's huge. And again, statistics according to the CDC, an LGBTQ youth are 4 times as likely to commit or attempt suicide than the general population.
And that's how the Trevor Foundation got set up.
Which is my next one here, Trevor Project. Yes.
It's huge because that community was a community of need.
Right.
And
they
they're
say
addressing that very specifically.
in just that population, and it's interesting, this population almost mirrors the veteran population in the percentages. 41% of the LGBTQ plus young people seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. This was their U.S. National Survey on the mental health of LGBTQ young people in 2023. This was done by the Trevor Project. And so 41% in that last year. including roughly half of transgender and non-binary youth. And, we are seeing this population
They're ostracized.
shifting right now. And I don't think people understand that, they think, oh, look at them. Isn't this great? They've come out. They're being who they are. They're doing whatever it is to be who they are. They think that solves the problem. That doesn't.
No, because they are still youth on the fringe.
Right. And they're
Or
young
adults
and they're
on the
still
fringe.
figuring it out. They're trying to, and their hormones are all over the place, which we said
Yeah.
before, has an effect on how they're capable of dealing with the transitions, the changes, the depression that might come from it, because maybe they're not getting what they need from their family or from their friends or whatever.
And we can never gauge what how that family is responding to them coming out. Yes, they've
Right.
done this, and maybe they have a group of friends around them that are close or in school. They're part of one of the clubs.
Right.
GSA has become, it really has exploded in the schools and has been a huge plus.
GSA.
Gay Straight Alliance.
Okay.
And these programs are really building up in the middle and high schools to support, to say, you know what, it doesn't matter. All the people who support this community come together and we will, be there for you and help you. That doesn't make what they go through at home the same.
Right.
And that can be a giant stressor. And, I have a number of kids who come to my office who identify as they, them, or, are going through a transition. And they say, but please don't tell my parents. So they've got to be one identity here,
Yeah.
and then a whole other identity there. That is a giant stressor on youth and adults.
And when they say, because they say, please don't tell my parents, because they've decided that their parents can't handle it. And maybe they
They're
can't.
just scared
And there's
of the
plenty
reaction.
of people.
I think they're
Of course.
terrified of the reaction because, again, it's an unknown.
Right.
So they'd rather not cross the bridge, or they're just not ready to do it.
Yeah.
And our goal is to help them, obviously, go across
Right.
that bridge with somebody holding their hand. But for them, that is the scariest step to take.
But I think for me, when I see these numbers, when I see these statistics, and in my community, and my youngest daughter is 19, and I will tell you, I can't even count on 4 hands how many people in her circle that she's known since she was young are identifying in this LGBTQ plus population, many transgender and all that, and I look at how they're showing up, and I look at their families, and I'm thinking, great that I love, support them, and if this is where they are, support them, but I also am like, guys, please be paying attention. Please be looking at the subtext. Look at the nuances of what's going on, because your child may think, yay, everyone's celebrating, but they're still having to figure out how to cope, and I see so much sadness, and I still see
Well, and the
so much
world
going
is
on
not
with these
quite
kids.
there yet. Even maybe their family is, maybe their friends are.
Doesn't mean
they
they
have
are.
to go into the world and function and be in a workplace or be in a
Right.
school environment, and we have no idea how people are going to react.
Yeah.
And our political situation is such right now that it's really in turmoil. And I think the uncertainty is really hard for this group of youth.
One of the things that I do as a nurse, that I've been, part of my work is working with catastrophic injuries. Sounds like it's like, how does that relate? But when someone has had a catastrophic injury, what I do is I go through and assess all the medical records and everything, and look at the adaptations that they're going to need moving forward in their home, in their relationships, in their workplace, in the school, wherever it is that they need to function in the world as this new person who has survived a catastrophic injury. They could have lost an arm. They could have, maybe they're paralyzed. Maybe they've got a brain injury or whatever it is. And there's, a laundry list of things that they need. And I'm wondering if someone could come up with a care plan for these kids that are going through this and anticipate all of the different things. Like you said, they have to go into the workplace. They have to go into school. There's all these places they need to be to help them.
Well, and more of those programs are rolling out. I think even just with SAVE, they do the Green Bandana Project,
Okay.
where they are training high school and college students to carry a green bandana and be trained as an ambassador so that anyone on campus could approach them at any time and say, I'm struggling. I
Oh.
need help.
And is
some-
that for the LGBTQ?
That is
Or
for anybody
mental health alone?
anybody thinking about suicide, anyone thinking about, feeling depressed, feeling overwhelmed, feeling lonely, feeling isolated. So to all the populations, I
It's
think
almost like a neighborhood
huge.
watch for
Yes, and it's
mental health.
amazingly
Like, we'd
helpful.
put those signs up in our windows, neighborhood watch, safe space.
It's a
Sounds,
very similar concept.
I love that.
And it's amazing, and they've rolled it out, and they'll yell at me, I don't remember the numbers, but they are in hundreds of colleges and high schools.
Yeah.
Slower in the high schools because it's, they're a little bit younger.
Yeah.
It takes more training, it
Takes
takes
a-
more involvement to get them to a place where that would feel safe and comfortable. But colleges countrywide are adopting this program, and it's been really beneficial. I think in one step ahead, they do that as well, and they train adults in the workplace to be safe spaces for people to approach, come to, and say, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck, I'm struggling, I keep having these thoughts about suicide, and I don't know what to do.
Okay.
And training people like that. I think that's so important to just start getting more and more people out there comfortable talking about tough topics.
Yeah.
Just like what you're doing here.
Right.
We need this spread out. Because once the stigma goes away, people will start talking about it. But this is still very stigmatized. Families still don't want to say, I had a loved one commit suicide. They
Yeah.
think it's somehow a black mark on them. They weren't a good enough mom. They weren't a good enough sister. They weren't a good enough whatever.
Right.
That all plays out. And I think once we start removing that, and this goes for the LGBTQA population in particular, I think, taking all that stigma away.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. We're all
Yeah.
humans. In the end, we are humans.
Yeah.
And when we learn that we can support each other, it goes so far in terms of giving people hope.
And I think sharing, one of the things that,
I think that's for first responders too. I just want to throw this in there
Okay,
because
yes.
I think they are a population that often feels quite ostracized and that they need to be a certain strong, tough,
Yeah.
able to cope with anything, never having a hard time. The stuff they see day to day and put up with is really hard.
Yeah. And right now, especially law enforcement. So I also have a law enforcement son.
And I have a law enforcement husband.
That's right. You and I are so linked in all these different ways. But, in law enforcement right now, this is LA County Sheriff, they are on mandatory overtime. These guys are working like 16-hour shifts.
No, it's
Sometimes they're
crazy amount of
working
hours.
6 days a week. They have actually, in the last, I'm trying to think, it's probably just even the last 3 months, they've had 2 deputies die on the way home. This was not suicide related, but in car accidents.
Because they're exhausted.
They're exhausted. They're not paying attention, or they're just whatever
And
it
how do you
is.
cope when you're tired?
But this group right now is in such danger because, they can't maintain this forever. And then we have the fires, and then we have the riots, and we're gonna take you out, and you're gonna go work some more. You start building that up, and you don't get rest. You're not getting any downtime. You're not getting any social time because all you're
because you're
doing is
working.
working.
And then you start feeling guilty. I'm not with my family. I'm not with my kids. You start coupling all those big emotions together.
Right.
And it becomes a pot that eventually is going to boil over.
Right. So anybody that has a law enforcement family member, reach out to them, call them, check in on your law enforcement family and friends
And veterans right now.
and veterans. Yeah.
There's a lot going on in the world that they need their support. And
Yeah.
it's so mixed in different media and different places. They're not feeling supported. They're feeling
Right.
very alone and isolated. And I think it's super important to reach out
Right.
and just check in.
Well, the veterans, especially like I said, there's so much going on out there in the world, and for the guys that have come home, that are retired, or they did multiple tours. I know with one of my sons, he went through a period of time he was going to sign up for the French Foreign Legion or something crazy.
Right.
He just he wanted to get back in the game and feel like he was doing something. They are so connected to their fellow military people that they worked with, and even people that they don't even know. They want to get back in
I think
there.
that's so common.
Yeah.
And I think then they start feeling like they're not doing enough.
Right.
Or they're failing somebody somehow, or they're letting people down. They're not the protector that they want to be.
Yeah.
And they see the cause from a different angle. And I think that's very, very difficult. And PTSD is real.
Oh, absolutely.
It
No,
is real,
100%
and it is
it
a
is.
giant risk factor.
Yes.
for all of them. And I mean, you talk about being a nurse.
Yeah.
Doctors are first responders too. ER docs,
Yeah.
nurses, all of them are dealing with this day in and day out. They are seeing things that are traumatic.
Right.
I mean, there was just an incident in a local school that I worry about a number of the kids around them, and it was not a suicide, but it was a death that was horrific and tragic, and that whole community becomes at risk.
Right.
Because kids start feeling like, oh my gosh, I just lost this person, or we can die as kids. And that
right,
sense
right.
of vulnerability is a huge risk factor. And so we're reaching out to that whole community, trying to get them resources and in, because they're all at risk right now.
Well, and that was, you know, another thing is when someone you love or someone you know commits suicide. You know, I remember hearing there was like a whole rash of suicides at a school, and they're like a suicide epidemic.
There's a contagion effect that
Yeah.
happens, and I think sometimes there are suicide pacts. They are extremely unfortunate.
Right.
That's what I would tell parents and other fellow kids. When you start seeing things online, because a lot of this is happening now online,
Okay.
you see somebody starting something like this or encouraging, let's all do this together, or I'm feeling hopeless, how about you? You need to reach out to adults. You need to get people involved who can step in and start intervening immediately.
Right.
And I think kids worry about ruining the friendship or being called a snitch, or, you know, oh my gosh, we can't trust you with anything. You got the adults involved.
Yeah.
At some point you have to let that go. It's more important to get involved. And I think adults sometimes worry about that.
Right.
Oh my gosh, but if I call
I don't
the
wanna get
mobile
involved.
crisis
That's not
unit
my
and
job.
they go there and they find out it was me, it'll ruin the friendship. It'll
Right.
blow up their family. It'll ruin their job. But you're saving a life. And ultimately, I think people get to the place more often than not every time, more often than not, they get to a place where they're grateful that you stepped in and cared
Right.
enough to, you know, try.
Right. And you know, and sometimes they are not going to do that.
And sometimes
and
they're
you
not.
just have to, you have to just know in your heart of hearts that
That
you're
you're
doing the best you can.
And doing it for all the right reasons.
Right.
And out of care and concern and love for whoever this person is. And either they'll hear it or they won't. We never know how the message may be received, but we know that you're doing your best and for the right reasons.
And again, it's going back to connection. And, you know, yes, we can text. Yes, we can social media, send, you know, memes back and forth, which are fun. You know, they're sometimes
Sure.
a fun way of connecting, and, you know, you laugh with your friend and then you go out for a cocktail later. It's like, aha, you remember that? You know, that's great. But just like I've always said, like, first you start with your family. Is your family okay? Check in with your family, your core
yourself.
family. Well,
I would say
check
start
in
with
with yourself. Yeah. Am I okay first? Yeah. Then check in with your family. Is your family okay? Then look at your neighbors. Are they okay? You know, what your people that, you know, you're closest with, and create connections with your neighbors. And then you can keep going from there. And just know that circle keeps getting wider and wider, and but keeping those connections, like the spoke of a wheel.
Yeah.
Just keep those connections going, and feeling connected to other people. If you're okay and you're feeling connected and you can show somebody else to be connected,
And then they reach out to their group and
right,
that spreads.
and have that
very
conversation. You know, talk to 2 friends, talk to 5 friends today. This week, make a commitment to reach out to a few people that you haven't heard from in a while.
Makes a huge difference. And I think that goes way beyond what people would ever expect. And you are doing prevention without even realizing.
Right.
And it is about connecting. The hopeless, helpless, loneliness triad, those are our 3 biggest risk factors for suicide. So if you're
Hopeless,
addressing helpless and lonely.
And lonely.
And so if you're taking one of those away, you're decreasing a third of the risk at some level.
Okay. That would be a good thing. So, okay, let's talk about the hard stuff. So somebody's committed suicide. Now what?
And that's where, again, and this gets back to the postvention. Somebody has committed suicide. At that point, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do for that person.
Right.
You're looking at whose lives did that person touch. The closest circle, and then going
Right.
outward and getting involved, getting them resources for grief support. How do we now get them connected? And I will say this from my parents' perspective, there was no lonelier feeling than losing a child to suicide because nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew how to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so they were completely alone.
Yeah.
And so it was getting them connected to grief support groups,
Right.
other families who had lost children to suicide, people who had lost spouses to suicide, just so they saw that it wasn't just them.
Right.
They had people to talk to who had been through a similar experience. It is different to lose your child to cancer than it is to lose your child to suicide,
Yes.
or a loved one, or a spouse. Losing
Right.
a spouse to suicide, that spouse is at huge risk for being a suicide attempter next.
Right.
Because
and
they feel
also
so
for
guilty.
illness, because the stress will bring in, I've seen this happen
Sure.
where, the one spouse has committed suicide and the other spouse, maybe they don't access the resources and just their health in general deteriorates. They just stop taking care of themselves or paying attention to, keeping themselves healthy.
And that's
because
that
of-
hygiene piece I was talking about. When
Right.
you start seeing all of those factors drop, you're looking at somebody who's really high at risk
Right.
for committing suicide. And so you want to get in there and get them connected to resources, to therapy, to, there's grief packets, there's books, there's, maybe they're religious. And if they are, getting them really connected with their church or their temple.
Because that's
That's
something that's,
a huge
especially
support.
if there's a religious aspect that can create a whole different set of issues for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you want to get them involved with that. And again, be reaching out a lot. And it's not just the first few weeks. They're often in shock. And some of the grief hits months later.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are there at the beginning and they can feel very supported and very connected, but they're kind of in shock. So their ability to absorb all of that love or absorb all of that attention is not at its peak.
Right.
And so then you want to check back in 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. You start looking at a
Yes.
window in that 6 to 12 month period, and any anniversary of the death, anniversary of a wedding or a birthday or a holiday.
Right.
These are key times to jump in and really reach out
And say their name.
and say their name.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I'm thinking about Joe right now and what it was like last Christmas, and he contributed XYZ, or I remember his laugh, or, whatever it is, because, I lost my husband to a sudden death. It was not suicide. It was a sudden death. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a whole episode on grief. So as grief
coming soon.
coming soon to Lips of Steel podcast, and just having that conversation about, people that don't know what to say. And, I would try to coach them and say, well, I don't know what to say. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't want to say nothing.
Right.
Sometimes that's it. That's all you can do. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't want to say nothing. So I'm here. And you can just sit quietly and just be with
Yeah.
them.
And you don't have to say you get it or you understand, or you can just simply say, I have no idea what to do right now,
Yep.
but I want to be here for you and sit next to you and we'll figure it out.
Yep.
And that's enough.
That can be enough.
Yeah.
And just having a person that is just willing to sit in that space for whatever period of time it is can mean the world.
Yeah. And allow the grief to happen.
Yeah.
The sadness isn't the part we're trying to get away. It's the loneliness, the hopelessness, the helplessness. That's what we're trying to get away.
Yes.
But they're allowed to feel sad. They've just lost a loved one.
Right.
And being able to sit with that, be okay with it, goes a very, very long way. And sometimes you say nothing. Sometimes you sit there and you knit together, or you read books together, or you go watch birds together.
Right. Or, one of the things that I always felt after my husband died, and I think this is true in those that I know who've lost someone to suicide, is have a meal with them. Like, people will drop food off. Dropping
Yeah.
food off is great, but you know what? How about go and sit and have a meal with them and occupy a chair?
Yeah.
So that chair is not empty.
So that they're not sitting there alone.
Huge. Yeah, exactly.
It is huge.
That is like, it's being there. It's
Picking
not.
them up and taking them to something together.
Yeah.
So they're not driving in the car alone every time and looking over at that seat and thinking, that's where my husband sat, or that's where my son used to be.
Right.
All of that goes a tremendous way. And that could be going to the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a big outing. It doesn't have to,
You don't have to make a big to-do. It's
Oh,
just
I'm
normal
gonna-
everyday things, because I will tell you
100%.
that and again, I'm going to be talking about this in a couple of different episodes, but suicide happens not on extraordinary days. It doesn't happen on wildly incredible days. Suicide happens on everyday, normal, just plain old days.
Yeah.
And those are the days that they have to return to once that person is gone. And stepping in and being there with them on those ordinary days is just as important as the extraordinary days, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have said it better, but that's,
Yeah.
so that's what there's no magic. There's no magic formula. There's no magic words. Nothing cures death. It's the one thing in this world that we can't take back or
Right.
do over or correct.
Right.
But you can make it a little bit better by being there for that person.
Tough subject to talk about.
It is.
And I am so happy that you accepted my invitation to come and talk about this and just to kind of just put it out there and make it a conversation. And, you know, I'm going to encourage everyone that's watching this today, if you know somebody that's struggling, if you know somebody that's had issues with depression, or you see the changes, like you said, you see changes in their behaviors and their ability to function in their day-to-day lives. You see a shift in maybe their hygiene or the way that they present themselves. Ask the question.
And don't be afraid to bring it up. You will not, by asking somebody if they are thinking about suicide or they've had thoughts of harming themselves or they're feeling really depressed, you're not going to make them depressed. You're not going to make them kill themselves. You're asking the question because you care, and it gives them an out. It gives them a way to bring up the subject, to say it out loud. And sometimes saying it out loud is enough of a surprise that they go, wow, I really need help. This is real now.
Yeah.
And now you've got somebody sitting next to you to help get them through that crisis.
Right.
But bringing it up will not be the problem.
Absolutely.
Not bringing it up is the bigger problem.
Right. Silence is deadly.
Literally.
And to be a little cliche about it, but it's true. So a couple things. We have 988.
Yeah.
If you or someone you love is struggling with suicide thoughts or is thinking about it, you know, attempting, 988. Dial it on your cell phone or a landline, and you will get resources right away.
The local psychiatric mobile response units or teams,
Right.
PMRT.
And you can actually call your sheriff's local sheriff or police
100%.
station and get those resources. If you have somebody that you think is struggling or is potentially in danger, you can have them come out.
And certainly save.org.
Save.org,
they have so
yes.
many resources for families for before, so prevention, intervention, postvention. They have resources across the board. If you ever wanted to join one of their teams or, you know, become one of the One Step Ahead members at your workplace, they have all those resources.
And that the Green Bandana Project.
Yes, if you have
Which
kids
is-
in high school or in college who you think might be great ambassadors for that program, they can join and get their school involved or help get their school
And
involved.
you know, there's a lot of people that are looking for volunteer projects for their families.
For sure.
This would be I mean, I just really love that Green Bandana Project. That would be a great thing to even do as a family and to help
100%.
educate your community about it, because more people that have that, you know, the knowledge about it, they're going to know what that green bandana means.
And again, it starts to remove that stigma. It
Right.
takes away the fact that we can't talk about it or we don't say it.
Yeah.
You can say the word. You can say suicide.
We can say
And it doesn't
suicide.
make somebody commit suicide. It
Yes.
gives them an out to say, oh, wow, people are talking about this. I do have resources. I do have people to talk to. And there's a sigh. There's kind of an out breath with that allows them some peace for that minute.
So we have a lot of resources in this episode. Thank you so much, Leslie,
Thank
for
you so
being
much for
here.
being willing to talk
and
about the hard stuff.
yes, Lips of Steel. And please put your comments in the post. And if you have other things that you want to talk about, if there is something that is on your mind and you would like to share it, please put it in the comments and come back for more episodes. We are going to be talking about grief. We're going to be talking about widows. We're going to be talking about all the hard things and some of the fun things too. But again, thank you for watching and looking forward to seeing you next time.
And thanks for having me so much.
Yay!